Chapter 15. Emma Frost. Missing. What do you mean she's missing? Did she run away? That seems to be the case. Her stuff is also gone. But Logan doesn't believe it. At this moment Logan also arrived, a frown on his face. She was feeling good here. She wouldn't run away without any reason. Logan, or Wolverine, was short in stature, like in the comics. But he was built like a compact mass of muscles. His gaze was feral, and his sharper canines and the iconic wolf beard on add to his wildness. Where's the professor? I don't know. He said he's going to locate her, Logan replied. Cerebro, Jean realized. Let's go. I'm sure he can find him, she said Logan, heading into the mansion briskly, but she turned around, looking at Will. Oh, and Harry, you can come too. The professor would like to see you. Follow, said Storm before flying in. Shrugging, Will followed. It was a good opportunity to enter Sabero. The interior of the mansion was luxurious, built in a Georgian revival style, with classic furniture, column supports, and brick facade walls. But it also showed traces of teenage activity, random messes, books, video games, comics, writings on the walls, etc. They walked through various corridors before reaching a room which looked to be Xavier's office, evenly spaced windows and a big mahogany desk with no chair. It seems that the professor doesn't need one. Jean swung open the bookcase to reveal a big elevator, which looked quite uncharacteristic in this place. Damn. A kid's school with a secret elevator to the basement in the principal's office. That's not suspicious at all, Will commented as everyone got in. Don't try to poke fun at the professor, or I'll throw you out. Shut up, Scott. Harry, I know it might look suspicious, but the professor really is the kindest person you'll meet. No shit. The professor was just as kind as Dumbledore. The elevator opened and the scene outside had shifted completely, having turned into a sci-fi fantasy now, with circular corridors made out of strange materials, intermitted with automatic doors which probably led to the high-tech labs and the legendary danger room. Jean led them to a thick metallic circular door which scanned her iris. With a soft sound, the bulky door opened automatically, revealing a huge spherical dome made out of metal. The low but deep hum of electricity could be heard, seeming to contain a lot of power. A narrow platform led to the middle where the Cerebro helmet is kept. Professor. But right now, an old man was lying on the platform, the Cerebro helmet lying on his side. How is he? Asked Scott urgently as Jean checked his condition. His body seems fine, but his mind, it seems that he has received a psychic shock. A few minutes later, they were all in the lab, with the professor unconscious on the treatment bed. Did you find something? Asked Jean as Storm entered. It seems that someone tampered with Cerebro's coolant. It has turned dark green, answered Storm. How is the professor? He's stable now. The infected coolant must have corrupted the psychic link, backfiring Cerebro's power onto the professor. He will be out for a while, said Jean. Logan started to leave. Logan, where are you going? Asked Jean. Where do you think? To find Rose. Good luck with that. She could be anywhere by now, said Scott with disdain. Well, genius, do you have a better solution then? Asked Logan, squaring up against him. Stop fighting, you two. I have a way, Jean interjected. I am going to use Cerebro. No. Scott denied instantly. There's no way you can handle it. You're not ready yet. Oh, come on, Scott. It's not that difficult. Can't you trust me for once? Don't bring up old things. This is a serious matter. So the other matters aren't serious. Can we bring Frost then? Storm suggested. Emma Frost. No way. She's no longer one of us. She had only been pretending to be nice so she could take the Cerebro. We can't let her near it, said Jean. Yo, can you guys stop? I'm having trouble concentrating, said Will, who was sitting at the computer desk. In front of him were dozens of footage on 3 different screens. What are you doing? Storm asked, standing behind him. Duh. I'm trying to find the girl, he said, flicking through each footage at a rapid speed. Scott scoffed. Stop trying to show off, he muttered. Is this her? Asked Will, ignoring Scott as he pointed at a small figure that was thickly covered walking through the crowd. Will paused the video, zoomed in and made the image as clear as he could. Logan quickly came over, his eyes concentrating on the image. That's her, he said immediately. How did you find her? Asked Jean. She doesn't have a vehicle. I assumed she wouldn't have money to book a flight, so I hacked into the surveillance of the nearest trains and bus stations. How did you even recognize her? Will opened a window which showed Rogue's complete information. Well, you literally have her registered here. I just had to type her name. Skip this. Just tell me where she is. Logan demanded. Westchester train station. It's a bit far from here, said Will, and Logan left immediately and Scott quickly followed. Thanks for this. Storm gave a serious nod, her piercing gaze now containing a bit of respect when she directed them at him. Will's eyes lingered on her retreating figure, the graceful sway of her plump rear impossible to ignore. She's single, you know, said Jean as she also prepared to follow. Let's go. Looks like you will be single soon as well, he said, making Jean's smile falter. Quote. Even if that happens, I'd like to keep it that way, she said after a pause. Exactly my situation. Absolutely not. I don't flirt with multiple men. Who asked you to? Just flirting with me is enough. As Will entered the elevator, Jean hesitated. Just go. I can handle myself here. Worst case, I'll stay in the office. Well, you've had a terrible first impression, she said apologetically before running away. It's not like I was going to join anyway, Will muttered, not knowing whether she heard it or not. Entering Xavier's office, Will was in deep thought. The plot had changed but the direction was similar. The X-Men were going to the station to bring back Rogue. But the problem is, they will meet Magneto there, who also wants to kidnap Rogue for his plans. Magneto is an Omega-level mutant, with almost all of his potential unlocked. The feats he can achieve, make his god complex seem very reasonable. Can Will really fight him? Well, anything for aura farming. And also, it's not like I haven't made any preparations. Will tapped his skateboard, letting it scan his finger. The turbines started to rotate and it transformed, turning into a hoverboard. This is Hoverboard 2.0, having a high fuel capacity and a few more features. Then, he pulled the straps of his backpack. Though it looked light, it was actually quite bulky. Green light flashed and the bag opened, sticking itself around Will's body. He stepped on the hoverboard and fixed the helmet, completing the Mark II configuration. This suit is prepared specially for Magneto. The exosuit is made out of a material similar to carbon fiber. It might not be stronger, but the suit is definitely lighter. The weaponry is formed through ceramic, plastic, polymer, non-ferrous but super strong. The suit also emits weak EMP signals through ceramic coils that can scramble his body's magnetic fields. There are also upgrades in the nanofiber launchers. These are just the major changes. Overall, Magneto's metal control and magnetic field control can no longer affect the suit, lessen the danger by quite a margin. His glider and extra arsenal are still on the way but he still has sufficient weaponry. Will stepped on the glider and flew out through the open window. His hoverboard was much slower than the X-Jet. So, by the time Will reached the station, some unexpected things had happened. Magneto was hovering a few inches above the ground. His aura was actually even higher than the X-Men, which shouldn't be a surprise. Flanking him were two of his followers. One had a big touch flicking out of his mouth, and a strangely shaped limbs while one. On the other side was a 2-meter-tall giant with big canines that were much bigger and sharper than Logan. His eyes didn't seem to have irises, being all white, and harp body spikes protruded through his knuckles. They were Toad and Sabretooth. Around them was a scene of complete destruction. Since the station was near the police station, the police had also arrived. Unfortunately, their guns were currently floating in the air, trained at them. A few cars were flipped overs, and the ground had several craters. The X-Men were completely bound with several types of metallic objects, completely immobile. People were still screaming and running away and a crowd had gathered near the vicinity. Will entered stealth mode and quietly approached the scene, which is nothing more than turning down the lights, lowering the sound of the glider, and scrambling his electromagnetic signature. It seems that the heroes and the villains were exchanging dialogues. When Will reached, the exchange was over as Sabretooth hefted Rogue on his back and the trio started to leave. Seeing that, the crowd that gathered began to move further back. Will quietly snuck as close as possible, hiding behind a nearby column. Then, he aimed a dart at Magneto and fired. This dart was filled with a compound made out of ketamine derivative and enhanced tranquilizers. The body is made out of carbon fiber and the sharp and thin tip is hardened polymer. Theoretically, Magneto should not be able to sense it. But knowing just how dangerous and undefeatable he is most of the time, Will didn't hold out much hope. Plop. The dart hit Magneto just below the helmet and the overpowered villain plopped to the ground like a sack. Will. It shouldn't be like this, right? Magneto is already down. What do I do? For a moment, Will was totally confused. He had seen this method work in comics, but he still didn't think it would actually work. Then he remembered. Oh, right. Aura farming. He turned off the stealth mode and heroically rose from the ground, looking down at the mutants. White Knight. Oh my god. It's really him. He's finally here. White Knight. Get them. Are you guys going to surrender? Asked Will, pointing his wrist at the duo. The only answer was Toad's acidic tongue, which flicked at Will with surprising power. A carbon-fire monomolecular blade popped out of his wrist, which vibrated high frequency. Mind boost. Will stood straight on his glider and his hand slashed out in a powerful arc. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. A horrible sound was emitted from the mutant's throat and his tongue was accurately intercepted by the blade. Yeah. The gathered audience cheered for the White Knight, seeing him easily fight the villains that seemed invincible just a few moments ago. That was your last warning. With that, Will swooped down, firing nanofiber nets at the two mutants. Despite the pain, Toad was still able to dodge with his amazing agility. Sabretooth threw Rogue aside and directly broke the threads using his immense strength. With the mutants separately, Will went for Sabretooth first, him being a much greater threat. Sabretooth was not one to be intimidated as he also bared his fangs and directly rushed at Will. Will ducked to the side, his blade slashing through Sabretooth's ribs. With a growl, the giant ignored the wound and slashed at Will with his long hand. Will parried using the blade, its vibrations damaging the claws, but the force behind them was so immense that Will's hands and shoulders felt a huge impact, throwing him back. Will shrugged his shoulders and cracked his neck. Thanks for that. The green light on his suit intensified. Under his mask, Will grinned. He launched himself at Sabretooth. Directing his slash aside, using the blade, he punched him in the face with all of his momentum. Saber was knocked back several meters, his nose completely crushed. The armor enhances Will's power using bioelectricity and the hoverboard's fuel cells. And, the interesting parts is, it also used the physical burst he gets from Saiyan's masochism. Will hovered towards Sabretooth to finish the job, but he had to duck as a tongue coated with acid flash above his head. Incidentally, it hit Sabretooth, who had just gotten up. Right in the eyes. Will still wasn't really confident in dealing with Sabretooth. After all, the guy's strength can reach 4 tons. Will needs to be alive to absorb the impact of the hit. Unexpectedly, Toad did the job for him. The laser in his hand was charged and he fired it at the Toad without even looking back. Stop. But at this moment, a voice resounded throughout the area, making him pause. The police officers who were overlooking the scene picked up the guns that Magneto had dropped and aimed it on themselves. Those with semi-automatic weapons pointed them at the public. Nobody should move, or else there will be a bloodbath. Who the fuck? Will couldn't understand who this was. The voice was feminine, rich, and seductive, the kind that should sound very good when moaning. But right now, it sounded very bad to Will. Magneto's body was lifted from the ground, along with Toad and Rogue. White Knight, I have wanted to meet for a while, but this wasn't the situation I had in mind. Damn, villains exchanging dialogues with me. It seems I have made it. Oh, what situation were you expecting? He asked, trying to locate the person. Well, of course, it was the situation of you saving me like a knight in shining armor. A.N. Emma Frost's entry. Vote. I hate to ask this, but I really need Power Stones. Also, Scott really is like that in the movies. I didn't change him. It would be unnatural if he didn't clash with Will. 25 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 16. Well, let's go to war. By now, the X-Men had also managed to free themselves from all the metals. Suddenly, one of the policemen fired at Jean, who had her hands raised and eyes closed. The Phoenix was deep in concentration and the only person who was near her at the time was Scott. But he was not able to do anything before Jean was shot, breaking her concentration. You should know better, Jean, said the voice in amusement. With Jean like this and a lot of innocents being held hostage, the X-Men were also powerless as they watched the bodies of Magneto, Sabretooth, and Toad being carried away. They were put in a jet similar to the X-jet which was parked nearby. A purple-haired woman in a sexy purple leotard helped load them, before closing the hatch. Psylocke. Though her face was covered, Will knew it must be Psylocke, judging from her attire. What the fuck is going on? Psylocke was also a popular mutant in X-Men, having ninja-level combat abilities as well as psychic abilities. But this is definitely not Psylocke's work. Psylocke's psychic powers were not strong enough to precisely control so many at once. So, who the fuck is the owner of this voice? 2 mutants who hadn't appeared in the plot. Things had suddenly deviated majorly. And that too, when everything was going so well. Will had managed to take down Magneto. On his own. And the other two mutants were about to be defeated too. It was a feeling similar to his gaming days when the internet was cut off while he was solo carrying in a team-based PvP battle, and winning. With Jean shot, the X-Men had already given up the fight. As the jet started to leave, Will also tried to follow, but a gunshot rang out, making him stop. "I'm still here, you know," said the voice playfully, stopping Will in his tracks. Will had no choice but to stop. The media had already arrived, broadcasting this live. If people were killed, he would lose aura. After the jet left, the people were suddenly able to control themselves again. Having no chance at catching up with the jet's speed, Will gave up. He instead quickly checked on Jean's condition. "How is she?" he asked, checking the wound. She was shot in the abdomen. According to Iris's scan, her condition wasn't life-threatening. While the X-Men's combat suits weren't bulletproof, they still seemed to provide a certain degree of protection. "I'll live," Jean answered directly, looking at Will with a scrutinizing gaze. "Thanks for your help." But then she coughed, causing Scott to fuzz over her. Jean closed her eyes and slowly out-pulled the bullet. "Can you tell me who that was?" Will asked. He figured they might not bother explaining all this to Harry Parker. "Don't you see she's been shot? We need to leave now," Scott interrupted. Will took out a small vial. "Here, this should help," he said, pouring one drop into Jean's wound. "A single drop a single time is perfectly safe." Jean gasped in pain but her eyes widened in surprise. "What did you do to her?" Scott yelled at Will. "Scott, stop. The bleeding has stopped. My wound is getting better." Will shrugged. "You should be fine after some time. Can you answer my question now?" "It was a mutant named Emma Frost," Jean still answered, the name causing a frown on her face. "She is very cunning and devious. I should have been able to stop that bullet but she attacked my mind at the same time." "Well, are you sure it's her?" Will had also guessed as much, but he still asked once more for confirmation. Mainly because he hasn't seen Emma Frost plus Psylocke configuration. And they were helping Magneto. "Positive," Storm nodded. "She is the one who recruited Psylocke, the woman in purple clothing. And the voice also belonged to her. As for why, I have no idea." Emma Frost. So it really is her. Left alone, Will was deep in thought. Emma Frost is an Omega class, right there along with the strongest. In this world, he had heard about her. She is the head of Frost Internationals. Will didn't know more than that. And for good reasons. It was already good that she steered clear of him. But when Jean had proposed to use Cerebro to find Rogue, Storm had suggested finding Frost. It seems that they already know each other. Clap. Clap clap clap. Will looked up to see everyone who had gathered clapping and waving at him. "Thanks for saving us, White Knight. We knew we would be safe. You tried your best. Don't worry, you'll get them next time. Aura +1. Aura +1. Dot. 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 Dot." Encouraging words came one after another as his aura kept rising. But Will suddenly felt a little burdened. So many people trust him, believe in him. And he was only doing this for aura. He returned to Xavier's office. It seems that no one had come looking for him yet, probably too busy treating Jean and the professor. After a while, the elevator door opened, revealing Storm. "You have been here the whole time?" she asked, looking at him in surprise. "You could have taken a walk, you know. Met others." Will shrugged. "I didn't feel like meeting teenagers with superpowers. I still have a lot to live for." Storm could only nod at that. "My sincere apologies, we have neglected you. Let's go. We will now help you with your problem." "How's Jean?" he asked, getting into the elevator. "She is stable." "Wait, how did you know?" Will showed her the videos uploaded on YouTube and Facebook on his phone. "Well, news travels fast nowadays." "Jean is fine," Storm sighed. "In fact, it was her who reminded us about you." Will reached out a finger to her neck, which was badly bruised, likely from suffocation. "How about you? That metal guy seemed quite brutal." Storm sighed. "I'm fine. Nothing too bad. But Magneto intended to go further. I could see it." Will smiled. "The hero saved the day, huh? Overall, the aura points he gained from this trip were quite good." Storm nodded. "White Knight. He's a noble warrior," she said, a smile crossing her lips. "You know about him. Of course. He's all the kids have been talking about. He's their inspiration." Will smiled at that. "Looks like he'll need to make a trip in the suit in order to aura farm." But along with it, that feeling of carrying a burden was also there. Will put it aside. "So, you are into that kind of men, huh?" I don't have a type. I simply admire White Knight." They reached the lab where now another bed was occupied by Jean. Scott was sitting by the bedside while Logan leaned against the wall in a bad mood though, he's always in a bad mood. Jean saw them coming and smiled. What are you guys talking about? White Knight. Oh, him. Jean looked at Will strangely, her eyes scanning him. He really saved our asses today, she said, getting up. The way she looked at Will made alarm bells go off in his head. Why are you getting up? You need to rest. Scott tried to push her back, but she shrugged him off. Scott, I told you I'm already healed. White Knight's serum was really miraculous. Jean didn't forget to glance at Will when she mentioned the White Knight. So, we really need to thank him. Jean walked right over and stood in front of Will. Thanks, White Knight. I didn't expect it to be you. What? Suddenly, everyone was shocked. So, you found out, Will sighed. He had already expected it to happen. But no worries. This was also why he had told them his fake identity Harry Parker. It means that they only figured out the alias of alias. The dumbest disguise skill was still active. As for whether this disguise can last or not, well, Will only needs to be cautious till he's overpowered. You can sense me, right? He asked Jean. This so-called mutant aura is really beginning to become a problem. He needs to get it fixed as soon as possible. Jean nodded. I was surprised at first but then it made perfect sense. Wait, you are White Knight? Storm questioned, a bit flustered and a bit angry. How could she not be after the conversation they had in the lift? But at the same time, Will got aura notifications. How can it be him? Asked Scott, looking to be in denial. How can it not be him? Jean asked back. His last location was in Oz City, which is affiliated with the Oscorp group. White Knight's tech also belongs to Oscorp. It would also explain his psychic intrusion blocking tech. Furthermore, he was also not phased at all when we knew that we were mutants. Storm was also beginning to see it. It was not ignorance of youth, but self-assurance of a warrior. You managed to defeat 3 power mutants within seconds. While you seem to usually act frivolous, this was an admirable feat. Thank you for helping us, said Storm, regarding Will with respect. Don't forget that one of them was Magneto, Jean added. You really live up to your name. Ladies, I am simply doing my job, Will bowed with a flourish. So, who can help me with blocking out this detection now? Will asked. Let's go. Jean nodded. Wait, we still haven't dealt with the current situation. Why are Magneto and Frost working together? What are they planning? Scott said. Scott. Jean glared. After all, Will had helped them just now. It was only natural to return the favor. Hate to agree with the Slim here, but if you guys are going to keep wasting time like this then I'm leaving, Logan also added. Scott frowned at his address, looking down at his slightly lanky frame. Yeah sure, go alone with your metal skeleton. I'm sure Magneto would be happy to get free adamantium, he snarked. Will sighed, ignoring their bickering. This situation indeed takes precedence. Can you tell me more about this Emma Frost? She really interrupted my aura far. Cough. My fight. Emma Frost is a highly trained psychic. Not long ago, she used to be one of us, said Jean, her eyes a bit dazed as she recalled the past. She was older than us and she always took care of us. And she really loved teaching children. Despite her eccentricities, she was a favorite of many. She used to dress very sexy, Scott added his explanation, to which Will nodded with a, that explains it, look. Every sexy teacher is a favorite teacher, no matter how bad. But that earned them Storm and Jean's glare. But she betrayed us. Her views clashed with Xavier and she had thoughts of taking over the academy. Xavier detected it and we parted ways. We never expected her to join Magneto, Storm added. Yeah, Magneto is an extremist. Following him is madness. Especially for someone as cautious and cunning as Emma, Jean nodded. It must have something to do with the recent unrest. Mutant suppression is getting more and more prominent, said Scott. But, what are they going to do? Taking action now will only make things worse, said Jean. Guys, hate to interrupt again, said Will at this moment, once again sitting in front of the computer. He was only turning the CCTV footage back on, of Xavier's office. Having blocked it earlier to prevent his White Knight transformation from being recorded. Seeing Will like that, the X-Men suddenly felt a feeling of deja vu. No way, said Scott in disbelief. Logan was the first one to rush up. Did you find her again? Well, no. But I found something more peculiar, he said, showing footage of an old man arguing with a taxi driver. What's an old man got to do with finding Rogue? Asked Logan. Well, that's not an ordinary old man, said Jean and Will zoomed in on the video. That's Senator Kelly. Isn't this area just outside our mansion grounds? Scott exclaimed in surprise. Will opened another tab on a different screen. According to the latest news, Senator Kelly has been reported missing, as per last night. And shows up here all disheveled. It must have something to do with Magneto, said Storm. Will sighed in relief. If Senator Kelly is here, that means that he can still use his future knowledge. At this moment, Will also got another text. The rest of his arsenal had arrived. While the X-Men questioned Senator Kelly, or rather, read his mind to find out Magneto's plans, Will met up with Brock. Boss, you should have taken us with you, said Brock. He was also wearing an additional helmet for psychic blocking. Will shrugged. Yeah well, the one time I go without bodyguards. Anyways, did you bring everything? Ethan. Be quick. I'm trying, said Ethan, who was carrying a huge cargo box. Boss, are you actually going for a war? What the hell did you bring in this thing? Well, you can call it that, said Will, dead serious. The smile on Ethan's face vanished. Is it against those mutants? We saw the clips on the way. They're too dangerous, said Brock. Do we really have to do this? Not us, just me. As for why? Well, billionaires fighting their own battles is going to be a trend soon. I'm just getting ready, he said, pulling on the straps of his backpack. The Mark II quickly covered Will through auto-connecting fibers. He opened the box and methodically began checking and assembling the equipment. In the conference room of the X-Men, everyone's faces were grim. So, Magneto wants to turn all the world leaders into mutants. That would seem to be the case, said Jean, who had just read the senator's mind. But the mutant transition isn't even stable yet. He is going to end up killing everyone, said Storm in frustration. Scott shrugged. That's Magneto for you. He would probably be even happier if that happens. So, are we going to stop them or what? Asked Logan. He had started to use, a big improvement. But no one could pay attention right now. Jean sighed. Can we even do that? Magneto, Mystique, Sabretooth and Toad. And now Emma Frost and Psylocke are also added to the mix. We still have the White Knight, Storm offered. Jean also brightened at that. With him, we would indeed have a fighting chance. Him. Scott scoffed. He has no superpowers. As far as I could see, he might be a bit stronger and has a bit smarter mind. He basically relies on his suit. Well, someone was jealous. Whatever the case, he managed to bring down Magneto's team by himself, Storm countered. That was luck. Do you think Magneto would offer us his neck to inject him again? Or do you think Toad is going to accidentally blind Sabretooth again? I'd rather go with him than not, Jean concluded, annoyed by Scott's jealousy. Where is he anyway? At this moment, the door opened, revealing a figure on a large glider. Unlike his light appearance in the fight, this time, he was armed to the teeth. Well, let's go to war. Well, just keep voting whenever you have Power Stones lying around. Hope you liked the chapter Moai. 29 comments 0 vote. Chapter 17. The Battle of Liberty. Will's glider had been changed, having sharper edges and more launchers on its hull. It also had a higher fuel capacity. His chest had 2 belts strapped in a crisscross, having multiple grenades attached, and his waist belt was also full of weapons and equipment. The gauntlets on his hands were bigger and thicker, with increased nanofiber capacity and higher punching power. One of them currently held a big non-ferrous shield while the other one was reserved for the vibrating blade. Seeing him like this, Cyclops, who was saying Will was useless, took a step back involuntarily. Why are you fully armed inside here? Just because we gave you access doesn't mean you can be so unruly. Will tilted his head at him. So, when there's an emergency you want me to take my time equipping all this while Magneto wipes the floor with you? A shield. Storm raised her eyebrows. You look even more like a knight now. Will shrugged. Every warrior knows, never charge in without proper protection. That goes for war, and other things. Jean's mouth twitched at that. Anyways, have you found out why Magneto kidnapped Rogue? Will brought up the main topic. We did, answered Jean. Rogue has the power to temporarily copy the powers of other mutants. Magneto plans to give his powers to her in order to turn everyone at the mutant summit into mutants. And did you find out where they are? He asked. Storm nodded. Jean used Cerebro to locate Rogue. They're currently at Liberty Island. Will hefted his shield up. Then, what the hell are we waiting for? A few minutes later, they all sat in the X-Jet, headed for the Liberty Island. So Jean, how was your first experience with the Cerebro? How does it feel? Well, Jean sighed. Calling it overwhelming would be putting it too lightly. It's like every voice in the world just shouted at me at once, billions of minds, all tangled together. For a moment I couldn't even tell where I ended and they began. Can you feel things around you or just other minds? It mainly amplifies telepathy, so I can only sense things with a mind of their own. Will nodded thoughtfully. These questions weren't casual talk. Will was trying to get some actual information here. After all, Cerebro is too dangerous. After the intrusion of Professor X, Will had already decided to keep a counter to this thing. You seem quite interested in Cerebro, Scott commented, his tone dubious. I saw you snooping around while we were all checking on the professor's condition. Will had already been inside that giant mindrapping machine. It was when the X-Men had first brought him down to see the professor, only to find the old man unconscious inside the Cerebro. I was making sure there were no threats. And if you're so worried about me being a threat, then don't bother. You won't see me once I'm done with getting my detection problem fixed. Frankly, I'm quite tired of your constant attempts at annoying me. Will really was beginning to get mad. It's not good for the other person when that happens. My words exactly. He really gets on my nerves sometimes. Logan also agreed. Scott scowled. You too. Scott, I swear you need to stop it now, Jean announced. Yes, Scott, White Knight and Logan are honorable men. You have to stop treating everyone like an enemy. I'm sorry, said Jean, turning to Will and Logan. Scott is not very trusting towards newcomers. And after Emma's betrayal, it has only been harder. He had a crush on her, Storm clarified. I did not have a crush on her. I only admired her leadership abilities. Nothing more. Scott protested. Jean, you have to understand. I never liked her. You don't have to explain to me, Scott. I told you I need some time. What exactly did you mean by needing time? Are you breaking up with me? Can we talk about this later? Jean put a hand overhead. I need to save my mental power. Especially after Cerebro. In a somewhat oppressive atmosphere, they reached the vicinity of the Liberty Island. Slow down. We don't want to be discovered, said Jean. I'm trying. Aurora, a little help. Said Scott. Storm raised hand and her eyes started to turn cloudy white. She was trying to create fog in order to obscure the jet. Wait. Will stopped. Both Frost and Magneto know your powers well. If they see fog appearing out of nowhere, it's a dead giveaway. Knight is right. This would expose us faster, Jean also nodded. It seems that Will had already been given an X-Men code name, Knight. What do we do then? Open the hatch. I'll sneak in alone first to check out the situation, Will volunteered. No, it's too dangerous, Jean instantly denied it. Don't worry, I will just do primary surveillance. I will run away if anything happens. Since Emma Frost was also against them this time, the plot might have changed completely. Will first needed to make sure they weren't walking right into an ambush. Be careful. I will. You guys wait for me. If you hear the signs of fighting, charge in. The cockpit opened and Will flew in the direction of the statue in stealth mode. But after flying for only a little distance, he stopped. He didn't dare to go further. Magneto's powers are too broken. Even with this stealth armor, Magneto can still detect people based on the disturbance in small magnetic particles or ions, if he spreads them around himself. A few stealth drones appeared by his side. These were his secret weapons. Having already known that the battle will take place at the Statue of Liberty, Will had long sent them here. The small drones approached the torch of the statue. Under his helmet, the footage of the torch was displayed on the interface. Will stopped the drones when they reached the statue's height and zoomed in. Even from such a distance, the inside footage of the torch was displayed on his interface clearly. He saw a silhouette wearing a helmet and a cape with his back facing the camera. On his head was a metal helmet. It was, of course, Magneto. In front of him were his minions, Toad and Sabretooth. There was also a blue-skinned woman wearing no clothes. She had bright yellow irises that seemed to glow with an inhuman light. Her lithe body, curvy at the right places, was on full display, only the important parts being covered by small spiky protrusions. This was Mystique, the shape-shifting mutant who infiltrated X-Men and tampered with the Cerebro. But in addition to these, there was also a huge mass of fat. This guy was so fat that he put those fat Americans with eating disorders shown in the TV look skinny. As that, Blob. Blob was another evil mutant who followed Magneto, but he was not in the movie plot. Generate sound. The drone picked up the low sound waves and amplified it. Will could hear a low sound of a girl. Let me out. Please. It must have been Rogue, the young mutant girl with the awesome power of absorbing the abilities of other mutants. Rogue's voice kept ringing out intermittently, but no one seemed to pay any mind. Why at this time? Right when we were about to succeed. It was Mystique who said that, her voice silken and husky. Right now, it had a hint of frustration and anger. It matters not, said a deep, commanding baritone voice. It was Magneto. We need to move ahead of time now. I can't risk failure at this point. Will had no idea what they were talking about. After all, Magneto's plan seems to be working smoothly. Did something unexpected happen? Magneto suddenly turned around. His cloak parted, revealing an iron armor underneath. I sense a disturbance. A jet. It seems that we have company. Magneto's voice came, causing Will to frown. It seems the X-Men still tried to force entry, or maybe they were discovered from far away. Toad, Mystique, Blob, you three go down. Sabretooth, you stay here and protect me. Will made the drone fly around, looking everywhere. But he couldn't find any trace of Frost and Psylocke. What the hell is going on? Where are Emma Frost and Psylocke? Weren't they supposed to be helping Magneto? Are they doing something else? Or are they just resting inside, just out of sight? With the new information, Will quickly made his way back to the X-Men. The jet had indeed moved forward from the previous location, having landed near the shore. How is it? What did you find out? Jean asked as soon as she saw him. Magneto is preparing to start the machine. Sabretooth, Mystique, and Toad are also there, but I couldn't see Frost and Psylocke, said Will. The help must have been a one-time thing, said Scott. Emma is not like that. The other X-Men also seemed relieved. Maybe they did seem to have the confidence of fighting Magneto and Frost at the same time, and maybe they simply didn't want to fight someone who was formerly one of them. As far as I know her, she wouldn't do anything without a deeper reason. I suggest we stay alert. She might be hiding nearby, said Storm. Psylocke does have a cloaking ability, Jean added. Also, Blob is also there. Logan raised an eyebrow. Blob. What kind of name is that? A very accurate one. Blob is literally that. A blob, of fat and muscles, said Will, and Jean nodded. He's a very dangerous mutant. His strength is much higher than Sabretooth and his agility is not low despite all the fat. Much higher than that brute. Even Logan was surprised. Just Sabretooth had given them enough trouble, but now they also have to deal with this guy. Oh, and one last thing, Magneto sensed the jet. So, they know we're coming, Will added. Blob, Mystique, and Toad will be there to welcome us. Hearing that, everyone glared at Scott. They reached the base of the statue and entered the museum, Will disarming security along the way. The marble floor gleamed under the cold lighting, glass cases displaying relics of liberty and freedom. Careful, Logan suddenly bristled, looking around in vigilance. Someone is here. They didn't really get the chance though, as a heavy mass fell into their midst from the high ceiling. It was Blob. Boom. The shockwave was so strong that it blew the X-Men in all directions. Jean was particularly unlucky, as she bumped the glass monument beside her, breaking it in the process. Furious, Scott immediately fired his optic beam at the giant's flesh, causing ripples. But the giant yelled out, throwing a statue at Cyclops, making him collapse. The blob then made another leap, punching towards Storm. Storm, who was still disoriented by the shockwave, was caught off guard. Her lighting couldn't be generated instantly, and the shields of wind she blew at the blob became baseless blows bouncing back bonelessly. At this moment a thick nanofiber cable attached itself to the giant's right leg and pulled it to the left, tangling it with his other leg. Blob fell short of reaching Storm, his punch landing right in front of her feet. Storm flew into the air due to the shockwave and Will's glider propelled him with a burst, allowing him to catch the weather goddess in a princess carry. Be careful, he said, gently putting her down. Thank you, Storm managed, a bit shaken. Aura plus 6-0. Aura plus 6-0. Aura plus 6-0. Well, it has to be mentioned that the aura farming from the X-Men is quite substantial. Since they are main characters and have already developed their powers, their aura is the highest among the characters he has encountered. Peter isn't Spider-Man yet, so lower aura. Will couldn't revel in his aura farming since Blob got up and jumped them again, his face red and his beady eyes glaring at him through the layers of fat surrounding them. Leave this guy to me. You guys go ahead, he said, flying forward to meet the guy head on. His high-frequency vibration sword popped out of his gauntlet. He ducked through the giant's relatively slow punch and his hand moved. Ouch! The fat guy roared in pain, his voice extremely heavy. Several cuts appeared on his body. But, what the fuck? Will wasn't satisfied at all. He had slashed out several times, but the sword had literally bounced off. Blob started throwing huge heavy relics at Will. Fucker, those are actually important. Will yelled. He wanted his aura farming to be seamless. Destroying historic and cultural artifacts didn't come under that. He made a hand gesture of bending his thumb and the non-fiber shooter got set on adhesive net mode. He fired it everywhere around Blob, setting up a safety net that caught the artifact safely. He also covered the Blob in these nets, making him struggle in vain to escape it. The net kept stretching and sticking further, and it was overlapped by a more adhesive net when the fat guy finally made some progress. The humming sound being emitting from Will's blade intensified, the vibrations reaching the current max limit. His glider slid low and Will's sword cut accurately through the tendons of the right fleshy leg, causing the giant to stagger to one knee. Blob swung at Will with a backhand, which he deflected with the shield. Somewhat. Mind you, Will only tried to deflect it, not block it. And yet, the force behind it was so huge that he was blasted backward, having to kill his momentum with the glider. But Will grinned. The impact was absorbed by the shield and some of it was transmitted to the suit, making his muscles bulge. He was just testing out his new impact absorbent shield. Will pointed his blade at the giant. The turbine of his glider overloaded and a beam was shot from his launcher, precisely cutting across the giant's eyes. He burst forward with his might and punched the giant with all the might, toppling him over. Blob hadn't managed to plant himself yet, so it was still possible with the 10-second physical boost of his skill. Will covered him in more fibernet. The blade popped out again and this time, Will ran it through the giant's flesh like a chainsaw, the vibrations causing the sharp sword to slowly cut through the skin. Blood, along with other substances sprayed everywhere in microdroplets, some of it even turning to mist. Blob's physique absorbs all physical blows, no matter how strong. And if he tried cutting him with force, it would only bound off and break his sword. Only really sharp things have a chance at cutting through his flesh. And it seems that his high-frequency vibration blade passes the requirement, since the thick layers of flesh were cut through slowly but surely. Blob couldn't even scream properly, his mouth also covered with a sticky mesh of nanofiber. Will rinsed his sword and repeated the process on other limbs. It took longer than it should, but Blob had been dealt with. Even if Will wasn't able to kill the guy, he should at least stay immobile with all his limbs cut like this. During this brief confrontation, Will had paid little attention to other surroundings. He knew that Wolverine had been attacked by Mystique in another form and the two had disappeared while the other three X-Men were fighting Toad, the weakest mutant in Brotherhood. But when he turned his attention to them, he saw the Toad throwing Storm down the elevator, and Scott nowhere to be seen. In such a short time, Toad had made short work of two of the X-Men. Toad was now humiliating Jean by jump-scaring her but not actually doing anything. The useless mutant made a final leap, this time straight for Jean. Thankfully, she managed to stop Toad at the last moment, trapping him mid-air through telekinesis. But Toad opened his mouth, spitting out sticky, slimy acidic saliva at her face at point-blank range. Jean was pulled aside at the last moment, staring blankly at the Toad's Hachua that had landed on the ground not far away, searing and bubbling, with fumes rising from it. Will, who had pulled her aside, stabbed his sword through Toad's chest, making him collapse into a heap. He kicked the amphibian's body in disgust. Those lips are important, you idiot. Keep your filthy saliva away. Ahem, I mean, for speaking up for mutants, you know, he added, when he saw Jean staring, causing the lips in question to curl up despite the shock she was in. Scott, you really shouldn't have messed with me. Will really didn't have any scruples about flirting with Jean anymore. The rack of was blast opened as Scott emerged, and the lift doors were also blown apart, revealing Aurora, whose eyes had turned milky white, with electricity crackling around her. Logan also came running from another direction, one of his claws covered in blood. The X-Men looked at the bloody mess that used to be the two mutants and then back at Will, who was covered in blood. Will shrugged, retracting his sword. My hand slipped. Logan grinned. How many times? Aura plus 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 plus. ... Vote as you like the aura farming Moai. 31 comments 0 vote. Chapter 18. Solo clutching, again. They made their way up the statue, straight into the torch. Logan. Rogue called out immediately when she saw him. And then her eyes lit up with excitement. They landed on Will. White Knight. Will quickly scanned the surroundings, but only found Magneto and Sabretooth. There was still no sign of Emma Frost and Psylocke. But, no sooner had the X-Men entered the structure, Various types of metallic objects assaulted them one after another. Will entered mind boost, agilely dodging and deflecting everything that came his way, but the rest of the X-Men were trapped after just a few maneuvers, once again completely helpless against Magneto. A giant man suddenly jumped at Will, but he moved aside, casually hitting him with a dart. Sabretooth went down just like that. Scott the idiot was still wearing a metal visor. Of course Magneto ripped it off. He then fixed him with his head facing Jean, who was also bound. Logan was trapped with his claws facing his neck, so that he can't pop them out. Storm, who was also bound, tried calling lightning. Go ahead and do it. The entire structure is made out of metal, said Magneto. Your friends will be the first one to suffer. Having dealt with the X-Men, Magneto stopped, regarding Will with a scrutinizing gaze. I have been waiting, White Knight. Well, I am honored. I have heard from Frost that you might be one of us. Will shrugged. That seems to be the case. But where is Frost anyway? I thought she was in on your plan. Will didn't deny being a mutant. Magneto is somewhat lighter in his actions when dealing with his own kind. Besides, Will needed to fish for information. Magneto's eyes blazed with anger at that. You will know where she is soon. Anyways, her actions no longer have anything to do with me. But tell me, White Knight, if you're one of us, then why are you trying to oppose me? I am doing everything for the good of the mutantkind. Will shrugged. Because what you are doing is only making the situation worse for the mutants. Showing off your dangerous power in public. Endangering innocents and law enforcement authorities. And your latest, killing everyone at the UN summit. Yeah, I think mutants are better off without you. I am not killing them. Well, you might as well be. Because your machine seems to be faulty. It will only give them a slower, much more excruciating death. That's right. Senator Kelly is dead. The machine is flawed, Scott shouted. Magneto. You need to stop. The machine may be able to induce mutation, but it completely destabilizes the structure of the human body. Jean also tried to explain. But Magneto just shook his head. I don't believe that. Scientifically, the machine is working accurately. Even if Senator Kelly died, it only means he was too weak to be a mutant. Will sighed. You don't care at all, do you? He asked. Both outcomes are favorable to you. You are correct, White Knight, Magneto admitted. I have been patient enough. It's them who have invited war, not me. The leaders of this world are utterly weak and incompetent. Tell me, why do you work for those people, White Knight? Despite everything you have done, you don't have any power to enforce justice and your legal status is still that of an outlaw. Join me, White Knight. These power-hungry politicians and capitalists cannot stand the idea of sharing power with those who actually deserve it. Starting from tonight, let's purge each and every one of them. Either they become mutants, or they die. What do you say? Knight. Don't listen to him. He's a madman. Jean shouted. He's trying to win you over with sweet words, but there's no one he wouldn't sacrifice for his goals. Storm also added. Magneto glanced at them. So, you want him to reject my kindness and fight me? A demigod. The X-Men said nothing more after that. After all, they knew how powerful Magneto was. Now that Will no longer had the element of surprise, he really didn't stand a chance. Will sighed. Well, you can be very persuasive, Will said, to which Magneto inclined his head. Too bad, your plan is completely shoddy. Even if I let you succeed today, you'll only end up getting all mutants killed. Even if Magneto somehow kills everyone at the UN summit tonight, he still cannot gain any power. It would only result in a war which the mutants would eventually lose. Not to mention, Will was actually one of the so-called capitalists Magneto was fighting against. As for the White Knight identity, he could make it legal as well, but it is counterproductive for now. Vigilantes have a higher aura. So be it. Magneto just nodded, his expression hardening. Then be purged with them. He raised his hands, and his powers were unleashed. Metal railings, support beams, pipes, and even ladders, all changing into sharp weapons, being launched at Will at supersonic speeds. No. The X-Men could only watch powerlessly as Will was bombarded with this fatal attack. The light from Will's glider intensified to an unprecedented degree. Mind boost intensity, max. Will's irises contracted, and suddenly he saw everything in a blur, sacrificing clarity in order to see everything at once. The interface inside his helmet also provided him with the back view, leaving no blind spot. His mind did the rest. The glider set off with a burst and he rapidly wove through projectiles, deflecting the rest using his shield. Magneto's eyes traced Will with curiosity. Interesting. Your whole armor seems to be made out of non-ferrous materials. You also have some kind of tech that is scrambling your electromagnetic signature, making it very difficult to influence your equipment directly. Is this suit, perhaps, made to deal with me specifically? Will's answer was a focused laser beam straight to his face, which Magneto blocked with iron materials, and his magnetic shields. He really was prepared this time. While your toy is impressive, it cannot bridge the gap between against a superior existence. Magneto created a tornado of metals. And if that wasn't enough, he pulled out even more. Magneto created a storm of metal particles. He ripped out more and more metal from the walls and the ground, making it almost impossible for Will to avoid it all. Will set his gauntlet on fibernet mode again and went wild with it, spreading adhesive nets everywhere. At the same time, he tried to avoid the projectiles as much as he could, but those which he couldn't dodge impacted his shield or armor, creating some damage. When will I get vibranium? At this moment, one of the many thoughts running parallelly in his mind was this. But vibranium is not something that you can just buy with money. At least in this version of Marvel. Wakanda has a very strict supervision on it, and it's not even available on the black market. After getting hit for a few seconds, Will had spread out enough net throughout the place to slow down the bombardment temporarily. Exclamation mark. Overload. Exclamation mark. Overload. Exclamation mark. Overload. The impact Will had absorbed in this small window of time had been converted into physical energy, which was in turn converted into bioelectricity to power the armor. And the metal barrage was so intense and the charging had reached the max level. Laser mode. Will's suit started to glow with dazzling green light as the power was slowly transferred to his launchers. And then, he spun in a circle, laser beams from shooting from his launchers and glider, cutting through the metal, and even the walls. Will then concentrated all of it on Magneto's face. Magneto didn't see that coming. He pulled up the metal in front of him but it only managed to slow down the laser's descent. Then the laser passed through his magnetic shield, causing it to be refracted and weakened. It finally hit him in the chest, launching him across the room, bumping into his own metals along the way. Aura plus 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 plus. The X-Men, who had been moved away from the scene by Magneto, were completely stunned upon seeing this scene. The White Knight was showing them how it was done. Knight, you did it. Jean cheered. But Will was still under hyperfocus. Because he knew it was far from over. Lasers had been weakened by Magneto's defenses and he was also wearing a metal armor, which managed to save his life. He tried to follow Magneto to finish the job, but more metal covered the mutant's body, now even covering his face, only leaving enough space for his eyes to peer through. The defensive force fields around him had also been further fortified. That was an admirable effort. You almost had me again, had it not been for my extra precautions. And it was even a fair battle this time. Unfortunately, the games end here. All the metals rose back from the ground and formed a cage around Will, which started to shrink rapidly. The vibration blade popped out of his gauntlet as Will accelerated forward in order to break through, but he felt an invisible force pressing down on him, constricting his movements. It was the force field created by Magneto. How I'm supposed to fight this? Thought Will, a sense of absurdity washing over him. He had already given his all with that as far as fair head-on combat is concerned. The fight ends here. Magneto declared, slowly closing his fist. Not yet. Will activated 2 grenades. When they burst, the space seemed to warp as a loud noise was created. Instantly, the magnetic field holding him was destabilized for a brief moment. Taking this opportunity, Will swung his sword and burst out of the cage. What? Magneto was completely blindsided by the new tech as he felt the magnetic field destabilize. Of course he couldn't understand. These were the magnetic flux scrambler Will has designed after spending a lot of brain cells. Magneto reads and controls flux lines with exquisite precision. The scrambler injects rapidly rotating, broadband magnetic fields so that his gradients go noisy, making it difficult for him to maintain control. Throwing 2 grenades in opposite directions further increases the effect by creating interference shells, making the overlap zone extra messy. Tony has also used something similar in comics. Now free, Will headed straight for Magneto, throwing more flux scramblers. Into the destabilized field, he threw other types of grenades, bypassing Magneto's defenses. At the same time, the third launcher on his gauntlet and glider were activated, parametric sonic lance. Sonic beams were launched at Magneto, disorienting him and causing him to clutch his head in discomfort. Along with laser beams, sound was yet another force Magneto's was vulnerable to. The flash grenades exploded, creating a burst of light that blinded him, and then the explosive grenades exploded, rocking the whole place. Finally, Will fired his lasers at full power in order to finish the job. He slowly lowered his glider, his battery running a bit low after the crazy output. But when the light from the grenade finally dimmed, he saw a cocoon of metal. The metal slowly shifted, revealing Magneto, who was breathing heavily. Damn, Will sighed. The fucker still managed to get defend. Will really couldn't be blamed at this point. In the first place, he was just starting out on his path to power. A final boss like Magneto was too much for him to handle with his current means. But still, he had done whatever he could. Unfortunately, the flux scramblers were not powerful enough to completely break through Magneto's defenses. If he had more time to prepare, he might have come up with more effective options. Magneto looked utterly pissed right now, and his condition was not good. You might be the single most annoying enemy I have had. But your little tricks are utterly futile in front of someone who has ascended beyond human limits. Your farce ends here. Magneto raised his hand, no doubt executing an even more powerful attack from his endless arsenal. But, he suddenly staggered, falling to one knee, putting one hand on his head. What is happening? Will grinned. Well, your powers might have reached the realm of the gods. But your body is still completely mortal. It's vulnerable to neurotoxins. Neurotoxins. But how? Magneto suddenly looked at the slightly translucent gas that had spread around him and realized. Those grenades, you were only trying to distract me. Yep, some of the grenades Will had thrown had fast-acting poison in them, designed to take down Magneto. It's just that Magneto is just too damn cautious. If he had anticipated it, or if he wasn't kept busy with other attacks, he would have swept away all the air, filter out the toxins out. Even at this moment, Will was on guard in case Magneto made one final effort. But, the danger came from somewhere else. Watch out. Will suddenly felt a huge impact on his side, sending him sprawling right through the opening. He ended up outside the torch, still reeling from the impact. Hearing a rumbling sound, he looked up at the sky just as a bolt of lightning struck him. Will tried putting up his shield, but an invisible force pushed his shield down at the last moment, making the bolt hit squarely in the shoulder. What in the? Will's suit was made out of completely non-ferrous materials, so he wasn't hurt much. But because his suit was non-conductive, it also couldn't escape the damage. His glider started to malfunction and he had to force it towards the viewing deck with one last boost. He managed to catch the edge and hoisted himself up with the physical boost of the lightning strike and detached his feet from the glider. Look out. Jean's warning came just in time for Will to roll as adamantium claws pierced the place where he was lying moments before. What the fuck? Do you guys have no mental resistance at all? He shouted and Wolverine dived at him again, claws extended. Will tried to take out his vibrating blade but found that it was stuck. He ducked to the side and hit Logan in the ribs with all of this physical boost. Even though the Wolverine was sent to reel back, those adamantium bones only made Will's hands throb. He had to dive to the side as the red laser whizzed past him. He started running in random patterns, Scott's optic blasts chasing him. Logan also joined in, chasing after him like a hungry wolf. A tornado was created around Will, lifting up dust and debris which hit him and also obstructed his vision. Another optic blast managed to hit him, this one containing even more power, and Will cursed Scott with all of his heart. Fortunately, Will's webs were still working. He hit one at Jean, who was trying to mess with his movement, covering her eyes. And then stuck another one on a nearby metal block and swung it on Cyclops, whose annoying blasts were bothering him too much. Just how? Will knew what was happening, Emma Frost. He just couldn't understand how. Emma Frost did have telepathic abilities, but they weren't supposed to be this strong. She was able to control all X-Men at once so easily. In fact, they were fighting much better under her control. Frost. Where are you? Let's talk this out, alright. Will decided things were not going to work like this. Even if he managed to subdue everyone here, it still wouldn't be called a win. White Knight, you impress me more and more every second, said Storm. Her voice had taken on an entirely new tone as she rose into the air, body poised with effortless allure, one hand resting on her waist, hips tilted in a graceful, enticing curve. It was obvious that the person speaking to him through Storm was Emma Frost. Magneto, the Brotherhood, and even the X-Men, nothing seems to be able to stop you. I'm so glad to have escaped in time. Wait, so you're not here? Asked Will. Telepathy has a certain range which cannot be crossed. Unless. Jean was struggling visibly, the veins on her temple becoming visible. Knight, you need to run. She has the cerebro. Storm, or rather, Emma Frost smiled. That's right. Why would I be there? Don't tell me you thought I would support someone as stupid as Magneto. So, Magneto was just a distraction. You were aiming for Cerebro all along. Bingo. You get a kiss as a reward, she said, blowing him a flying kiss. Everything went according to my plan. But I still have to thank you. Taking over Cerebro took much longer than I thought, so I suppose without your help, Magneto would have probably turned half the world leaders into organic matter by now. It would have severely affected my plans. Oh, and what are your plans? They're not so much plans as a straightforward set of obvious steps. Planting mutant-friendly thoughts in all world leaders, stealing tech and military resources, becoming the richest and most powerful individual in the world, etc. I'll also expand Xavier's school, teach my students how to actually defend themselves, rather than these X-Men who can't even handle a puny toad. In short, there's nothing deranged like Magneto. So, what do you say, Harry? Are you willing to be my knight? This was the second time Will was asked this question. Just say yes. I can give you both Storm and Jean as a reward. In fact, you can get any woman you want. You'll also have endless power and wealth. We could rule the world together. Harry, Jean, who still had some autonomy, tried to speak, looking at him with pleading eyes. Don't listen to her. Please. Will's answer was, of course, a giant no. Just because Emma Frost is more rational than Magneto doesn't make her trustworthy. If Will followed her, when she has the Cerebro, he might be eaten alive. He doesn't really hate the idea of working with someone like Emma, but not when she has the Cerebro. Magneto had already been taken down. The reason the mission was still not complete was because Emma Frost with the power of Cerebro was also extremely dangerous and unstable. Make your decision fast. I am busy manipulating the minds of the world leaders right now. Will sighed. You know, you had better chances of winning if you had been here just now. But you just had to choose this option. Does it matter? I still won, did I not? And I have Cerebro now. Wait, who said you've won? Cerebro going ballistic. Hadn't Will seen that coming a mile ago? There are plenty of cases of it happening in movies and comics. The X-Men who had been still until started to struggle, as if regaining control. Storm groaned, or was it Emma? And then, the control was gone, just like that. The X-Men were back, moving their hands and feet in bewilderment, suddenly being able to control them again. Knight. What happened? Will shrugged. Maybe she also couldn't handle the machine's burden. This was Will's countermeasure against Cerebro. When he first saw the mind-enhancing machine, it was when Xavier had fallen unconscious. While everyone was checking on Xavier's condition, he had indeed been snooping around, as Scott had put it. He was installing a neurotoxin grenade below the platform, ready to be detonated in case Cerebro's controller went ballistic. That's why he had to confirm with Jean how she felt while controlling Cerebro, and whether she could feel the objects in her surroundings, mainly a certain toxic grenade right beneath her. It's just that, he never thought he would have to use it so soon. Mission completed. And with that, the most difficult mission he had encountered till now had been completed. AN. 3354 word chapter Moai. You might have noticed that I have started focusing on quality rather than larger updates, which has affected the Power Stone rankings. So, if you are liking it so far, please vote whenever you have those Aura Stones lying around. 49 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 19. New kind of rewards. Statue of Liberty. Inside the torch. A silence had befallen, at the abrupt end of the chaos. This is strange, said Storm, glancing at Will. I don't believe Frost would give up just like that. Scott looked at Will with full-blown suspicion. You were awfully composed even when Emma announced her plans, like you could easily defeat her. Will shrugged. Don't know what you're talking about. She also happened to release control just after you said, and I quote, who said you've won. Will raised his hands. All right, I took her out. I couldn't let her succeed, could I? How did you do it? Scott demanded. I have no obligation to tell you. Beg me on your knees and I'll reconsider, said Will, shutting him up. But, is she really gone? Are we really free from her control? Storm asked, as if expecting to be controlled again. It really is over, she said, looking somewhat stunned. I felt it. She had fainted for some reason. She even tried calling Psylocke for help. She should be out for a while, Will confirmed, also relaxing his guard. Not going that far anytime soon. Recalling the intensity of the battle, he still felt the chills. He had come prepared but had still almost ended up dead at the hands of Magneto. And the actions of these villains can also be really dangerous. Had Frost simply focused on her mission instead of attacking them, it would have been over. She could have fortified the base by stealing the most powerful weapons, and taken all mutants under her control. In short, she could have become unstoppable. Thankfully, Will found out about it in time, and just happened to have a failsafe installed in the Cerebro. But, the current matter had not been completely settled yet. The sound of helicopters reached his ears. The police was on their way, no doubt. He quickly made his way over to Rogue, the rest of the X-Men quickly following behind. Rogue seemed to have gone unconscious, having been hit by rogue metal particles. Logan cut down the machine, freeing her. "How is she?" asked Logan as Jean checked her condition. "She seems to have a concussion." But while this was happening, Will suddenly had a sinking feeling when he looked back. "Guys, where is Magneto?" Jean looked at him apologetically. "I saw Mystique taking him away." When you were attacked?" "You mean when you guys went nuts on me?" Will felt the veins on his temple throbbing. This was the second time Magneto got away. Is he really lucky for having great teammates like Emma Frost and Mystique, or is Will simply unlucky for having to team up with X-Men? Jean pursed her lips. "I'm so sorry. I really tried to stop myself." Storm also bowed her head. "Though it was against my intentions, I know that it was still my powers that struck you. I can only ask for your forgiveness." "Yeah, my bad too." Even Logan felt bad. Will really did try his best, but they really messed up at the last moment. Will shrugged. Forget it. Of course the performance of X-Men left a lot to be desired. But to be honest, all he really cared about was aura farming from them as much as possible for a higher mission completion rating. In the face of these rewards, he really didn't give a damn about Magneto. "If Magneto comes back, I'll just have to defeat him again," he said casually, deciding to aura farm instead. "Relying on my tech, of course," he added, glancing at Scott. Scott snorted, but couldn't say anything. After all, he was the one who questioned Will's competence due to his reliance on tech rather than his own powers. Jean approached Will and hugged him, making his injuries flare up. "You were amazing just now. I really can't imagine how we could have done this without you." "You indeed fought admirably," Storm also agreed. Unfortunately, there was no hug from her. "Aura plus plus plus. It's what I do," Will replied, patting Jean's back while Scott's fists and teeth clenched, his face turning green. At this moment, another glider flew in, stopping in front of Will. He had called it when the non-ferrous one was struck by lightning. Will picked up the remains of the previous glider, said, hopping onto his new ride. "Let's go now, the police will be on their way." On the way back, Will finally check the spoils of the war. Mission completed. Magneto defeated. Frost defeated. Aura farming. X-Men think you're him plus fight recorded for further use. Total aura farmed. 12000 PTS. Completion rating. 9.410. Congratulations. You gotten a pet. Light Phoenix hatchling. You have unlocked the pet feature. Congratulations. You have unlocked the ability, storage space. You have unlocked the manifestation skill tree branch. You showed high attainments in aura farming during this mission. Your class has been upgraded. Class, Apprentice Aura Farmer, greater than Adept Aura Farmer. Class bonus, Aura Cloak. Light Phoenix, the mythic Light Phoenix hatchling from a destroyed universe. The pet will be bonded to the user, allowing them to share of its abilities. Storage space, the ability to transfer objects to a pocket dimension. Current space, 1 cubic meter. Aura Cloak, covers the body in a cloak of aura that hides your aura signature and protects the body from external influence. For a moment, Will simply froze when he saw the rewards. But then, a maniacal laughter almost escaped his throat before he suppressed it. Heck to the yeah. It seems that he did make the right bet. Because there's no way ordinary missions would have given this kind of rewards. Usually, it's just simple aura skills, but this time, he got something new. An actual pet. And that too, a Light Phoenix. That sounded really awesome. And he has been wanting a storage space for a long time. If he has it, he might never have the shortage of equipment again. He would have a mobile arsenal anywhere he goes. As for Aura Cloak appeared to be just the skill he needed most right now. He couldn't wait to test out these skills to confirm whether they really were as good as he thought. Do you want to receive the rewards? Will almost tapped yes but held himself back. It has to be done when he's alone. After reaching the X mansion, they went straight to Cerebro. Unfortunately, there was no sign of Emma inside, only a faint scent of high-end perfume. While the X-Men searched the rest of the place, Will once again booby-trapped Cerebro for further future emergencies. He also checked the surveillance but found that it had already been erased by Emma. Then, while the X-Men were busy settling the rest of the matters, Will went into the nearby woods, ready to check his new powers. Accept the rewards. Instantly, new aura pathways were drilled into his body in different patterns, bringing in new pain. But it was nothing compared to the new kind of pain he was experiencing on his shoulder. Leaning against a tree, Will had to frantically take off his equipment and t-shirt to see what the hell was going on. A phoenix-shaped mark was being carved on his shoulder, little by little, made out of tiny symbols that seemed to mean nothing. Will felt that his wounds had started to heal faster. Or maybe it was just a placebo. He decided to call on his new pet first. But, he looked at his shoulder mark in puzzlement. How the hell does this work? He just tried activating it like his other skills. Light Phoenix. The mark on his grew hot, light glowing beneath his skin. And then, with a light flutter of wings, a tiny creature emerged. It was no bigger than a hawk chick, its white gold plumage glowing slightly in the dark forest. Its big eyes, that seemed to be made out of molten amber, clearly had intelligence, regarding him with what seemed to be timidity and a hint of curiosity. What surprised him was the fact that the creature seemed to have a very high amount of aura, according to his aura sense. Will suddenly felt a strange sensation in his mind, and then it could feel it. A connection with something foreign. It felt absolutely weird, and magical at the same time. He could feel the creature's thoughts. The tiny hatchling seemed to be quite confused at suddenly being summoned to a different place. Don't worry, little guy. You're safe, said Will. His fingers couldn't help reaching out to touch the cute little fella. But the phoenix seemed to be startled, jumping back from his finger. It fluttered its wings and climbed back towards the mark, disappearing as soon as it touched it. Will clicked his tongue. Looks like it'll take some time. He checked the next skill. Unlatching his battered shield from his armor, he activated the next skill. Storage space. His aura moved, manifesting outward. The space in front of Will blurred, as if there was a glitch in the matrix. He tried putting the shield in. Immediately, the shield vanished. Will checked the aura consumption and took a sharp breath. Storing that shield had taken around 200 aura points. This storage ability is not cheap. But then again, he is using the aura to literally manipulate space itself. Of course it was not going to be cheap. Aura Cloak. Will activated the last skill as well. Immediately, a cloak of invisible aura covered his body. Even inside, he could feel subtle layers of aura settling over his aura pathways. Other than that, he couldn't sense any other changes. His body was still the same. But he had expected as much. After all, according to the description, its function is to mask his aura signature and prevent external influence on his body. The rewards he gets are mostly related to the mission. So if Will's guess is right, at least he should no longer be mistaken for a mutant by X-Men and other organizations. And if he's lucky, maybe Magneto can no longer influence him even if he's wearing a metal suit. Done checking his skills, Will sent the drone footage of the fight to PR and started making phone calls, getting busy. The aura has been farmed. Now it was time to harvest it. Will and Jean entered the lab which was now empty. It was already late at night and they had just finished dealing with their own matters. Will was just informing Jean that he was leaving but the psychic insisted on finally fulfilling her promise of helping Will out. Will was also curious if the aura cloak was actually working. If it was not, he would still need X-Men's help. Take off your clothes. Do I need to? Yeah, they interfere with the detection. Will shrugged, taking off his t-shirt with a slight grimace. Jean gasped when she saw the numerous wounds. You're seriously injured. Why didn't you tell me? Well, it was nothing major. It most definitely is, Jean announced as she pushed him onto the bed and started diagnosing. It turns out, the injuries really were quite serious. Since the suit was made out of non-ferrous materials, it didn't have much in the name of defense and it was almost impossible to avoid all of Magneto's projectiles. Will only got away with it because he kept Magneto busy and didn't give him the chance to get serious. Nice tattoo. Jean's eyes were suddenly attached to the phoenix mark, looking at it in fascination. She lightly traced a finger over it and Will felt the baby phoenix respond through the mind connect, expressing its desire to come out. Shit. Jean has a high affinity with the phoenix of this world. Can you check the injuries first? Will had to distract her attention. Jean took back the hand that unconsciously stretched out. Tearing her eyes away from the tattoo, she instead focused on his injuries. She lightly prodded the big burn on his other shoulder, which looked the worst. She shuddered, as if she could feel that pain. This is a very deep burn. How did you get it? Will's shoulder muscles tightened in pain. Courtesy of the weather goddess. Oh, you could have blocked that one, she murmured in recollection. It was Jean who lowered his shield through telekinesis at the time. Once again, I'm really sorry for what happened. Will shook his head. Don't blame yourself. In fact, I am surprised you even managed to put up such a struggle against Emma Frost on Cerebro. About that, Jean looked thoughtful. To be honest, even I am surprised. It's just that when Emma was ruffling through my mind, something happened and suddenly, I was able to resist her somewhat. Will's expression grew serious. How do you feel right now? Jean looked into his eyes and smiled. I don't know, better. I feel different, free, like I had been walking through water and now I am suddenly on land again. Well, that's good, said Will, but inwardly, he thought it was not good at all. In the movies, Jean's powers had been locked by Professor Xavier, which resulted in really bad consequences when they were released later. Also, I don't know why, but I feel, Jean looked at him searchingly, as if trying to find something, but then she just shook her head. Never mind. You can tell me, Will offered, but Jean just focused on his injuries. How did you get these? She asked instead, examining two particularly bad bruises, one on his ribs and one on his back. Your dear boyfriend. He's no longer my boyfriend, she clarified, an annoyed look flash across her face. Will raised an eyebrow. So, you really are breaking up? Jean didn't answer. Well, good for you. I couldn't understand what you saw in him in the first place. Jean paused. To be honest, I don't see it anymore either. Then what kind of guys do you actually like? Does he pass any of the criteria? My criteria? Yeah, who do you feel attracted to? Who, I feel attracted to? Jean murmured. She looked at him in a daze, her hands lightly trailing his chest muscles. Will also maintained eye contact, a faint smile crossing his lips. Jean leaned forward slightly, maybe almost subconscious. Will would be a Japanese shonen protagonist if he didn't respond to a lady's initiative. The distance slowly closed and their lips met. Probingly at first, but they mashed together with such high intensity. Will took off the mature doctor's rimless glasses and pulled her curvaceous body into arms, not at all caring about his injuries, and Jean responded with equal passion, completely throwing aside her reserved and dignified demeanor. She stuck her tongue into his mouth, delicately swirling it with his own while Will's hands unscrupulously groped her ass. Definitely my type. He exclaimed inwardly, feeling the squishiness. They ended up on the hospital bed with Jean straddling him, grinding on his length over his clothes. But, at this moment, her hand touched his tattoo, and both of them froze. Will felt the phoenix respond more intensely this time and he felt his shoulder burning hot. From what Will could catch from his bond, the bird could actually sense a familiar presence in the Jean, something similar to its own kind. Will could only draw one conclusion from that. Has she already bonded with the phoenix force? After touching the mark, Jean suddenly seemed to have snapped out of the sensual state, scrambling up from Will's lap and tidying her clothes. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened, she stammered. I'm usually not like this, no matter how attracted I am to someone, not that I have been this attracted to someone before, damn it. I'm not attracted to you either. Jean seemed to have become an utter mess. Jean, calm down. Will didn't try to make fun of her for this seemingly adorable and clumsy behavior. Instead, he was absolutely serious. Because his suspicions had come true. No, you have to understand, something really is wrong. Jean, I believe you, said Will, gripping her shoulders. Sit down, we can talk about it. Jean really had calmed down and there was a certain gratitude in her for Will's mature way of handling the situation. I have discovered that after I was free from Emma's control, I have been feeling more impulsive, she said, her eyes glancing on Will's lips and his muscular body. And, I am also finding myself acting on those impulses. I just had a big fight with Scott earlier. I almost beat him up. That, you cannot be blamed for, said Will, making her smile. I'm serious, she said, lightly bumping his shoulder with her own. Alright, here's what I can infer. Will also got serious. Either your heightened powers are influencing your mind, or a part of your personality has been suppressed for too long, the locks on which have loosened. If there really is something wrong with me, that is, Jean added. Or maybe I am just having menopause in my 30s. But Will knew he was right. What he said were the two different ways that led to Jean becoming the Dark Phoenix in movies and comics. We can find that out right now, said Will, taking her hand. He looked into her eyes. Do you feel the impulse right now? Do you want to kiss me? Jean hesitated. Come on, Jean. I'm serious here. Jean looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity. She lowered her head and gave a slight nod. Really badly, she admitted. But this kind of impulse is only for you, she added hurriedly, as if worried he might misunderstand her for a slut. Will slowly put her hand back on his phoenix mark. What about now? Her eyes widened. The glow and warmth swept in front the mark, into her fingers. It's gone. At least, I can control myself now. Well, congratulations. You don't have menopause. There really is something wrong with you. Will was relieved. It seems that there's a way to prevent Jean from losing control through his light phoenix. This system reward really is a godsend. Jean let go of the mark, albeit reluctantly. What is this tattoo? Well, just know that it can help you whenever you lose control, until we find a better solution. Jean could only agree to that. So, can we do the tests now? Will asked. Of course. But before that, I have a question. Ask away. How old are you? Will paused. This again. He was at the age where he was too old to date teenage girls but too young to date older women. Somewhere being 20 to 40. Now, can we get back to business? No way he was gonna answer that. And so, they did the tests, with obvious awkwardness and sexual tension between them. But it turned out that Aura Cloak really did work, since Jean could no longer find any anomalies in him, making him appear a normal human. Afterward, on his request, Jean took him to see Forge's workshop. Forge is yet another reason why Will had come to the X-Mansion. His abilities, technopathy, genus-level intellect, and intuitive understanding of technology. In short, much more useful than the rest of the X-Men most of the times. As he followed Jean into the workshop, the smell of hot metal entered his nose. The place was big, cluttered with half-finished inventions, and glowing consoles. Tools, prototypes, and blueprints are scattered everywhere, making the place feel chaotic yet alive. A broad-shouldered Native American was currently hammering away at the hot metal. He had rugged features, black hair tied in a ponytail, and one of his legs was a mechanical prosthesis. Hey Forge, this is Harry. He needs your expertise. Forge glanced at Will and turned back to work. Well, you know I don't help random people. Well, this random guy just took on Magneto by himself. This got the Clanker's attention. He did. Will smiled. Let's do this again. Hi, I'm White Knight. There are a lot of things Forge can be useful for. First and foremost, better anti-magneto weapons. Second, better anti-psychic equipment. Will and acquaintances can't always wear these wigs to protect their minds. There are better alternatives, like small equipment that disrupt psychic waves, thus preventing interference. This was just the start of the list. Will put forward these suggestions, and what he already had quickly gained Forge's recognition, starting a lengthy discussion. Jean, who was still slightly wet, dried up instantly. The next day, Will woke up with a cute chick sleeping on him. No, it was literally a cute chick, the baby phoenix. When he woke up, the baby chick also stirred, before opening its eyes. You're awake. Will tried stroking it, and this time, he succeeded. Its small feathers were incredibly soft and warm. The bird chirped lazily, closing its eyes in satisfaction. Do you have a name? What should I call you? The intelligent bird answered with a chirp, and through the bond, Will came to know that it didn't have a name. Well, I'll give you one then. Are you male or female? Chirp. Female. Then, let's call you Willie. No. OC. How about Aurora? The bird perked up at that, and the name was decided. Your name is Aurora now, Will announced. It had nothing to do with the word aura. Not at all. How were the rewards? Post Gene images here. 3,600 word chapter Moai. Guys vote. Down finger. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 20. Avengers Initiative. The video of the fight between White Knight and Magneto spread like wildfire. This time, the aura farming was real. Magneto really was a demigod, and his powers were already revealed when he clashed with the X-Men and the police at the train station. And their fight inside the Statue of Liberty was called nothing short of legendary. It finally showed what White Knight was truly capable of. Various experts were called to provide their opinions on it. Magneto is a survivor of World War II and the Holocaust. His mutation allows him to perceive, generate, and alter electromagnetic fields. His fine motor control ranges from bending microscopic metal particles to manipulating entire bridges. Channel changed. White Knight has definitely shown abilities beyond the human peak. See this scene again. Did you notice how fast yet precise his movements are when blocking and avoiding them? Mind you, the speed of these projectiles is estimated to be above the speed of sound. Channel changed. That suit is a work of art. From what I can gather, it can absorb kinetic impact, of extreme levels, and convert some of it into energy that can supercharge the suit. This is groundbreaking tech. Channel changed. It was David versus Goliath. Magneto is too strong, and White Knight truly should not stand a chance. But he planned every step, and slowly lured Magneto into his trap, thus winning the battle. He's a tactical genius. Channel changed. It is theoretically possible to change an ordinary person into a mutant, but there has been no precedent of it being done successfully before. If Magneto was allowed to continue with his plans, the world leaders might have perished in terrible agony and we might have been looking at a world war in the truest sense. With every country involved. Yep, the real one. The attention on Oscorp had become so high that Will had to temporarily stop his White Knight activities for a while, fully focusing on getting more and more political leaders on their side and preventing security breaches. There were even talks about setting up a hearing similar to what they did with Tony Stark in the movies, for handing over the White Knight's tech, and White Knight's physique enhancement secrets to the government. But Will would still say it's worth it. The little pet he has gotten actually feeds on his aura, and its appetite is not small. His aura needs are only going to get bigger and he can't miss out on any opportunity. And, things are now much different. Unlike the first mission, when he was powerless and didn't even know if the system was legit, now he has gotten much stronger and has discovered the actual potential of the system. Naturally, he is willing to make bolder choices now. That's the spirit of aura farming. A few days later, Will sat in an old ice cream parlor. It was a tiny corner shop with faded pastel walls and checkered floors, where the air still smelled of fresh waffle cones. In front of him was Gwen Stacy, happily eating her chocolate fudge brownie. You know, we have this at the company too, he said, running a spoon through his own mint choco chip bowl. Yeah, but this place is the best. I always come here with my dad, Gwen replied, taking another big lick. Her eyes rolled back and she literally moaned. That makes sense. The police station is not far from here, right? Exactly. He has literally spent most of his adult life in that place, she said in annoyance, but there was obvious pride in her tone. Captain Stacy really is a great father, to be honest. He always manages to squeeze time for you despite being so busy. He does the bare minimum, said Gwen with a slight pout. But then again, it would never be enough no matter how much time he spends with us. You are such a daddy's princess. I haven't even seen my father in months, said Will with a laugh. Gwen also smiled, but it started to fade. Does it really not bother you though? She couldn't help but ask, feeling bad for him. Not at all. Imagine Norman and I sitting here, eating ice cream. The blonde cutie had to laugh at that image. No, but seriously Will, I can't understand how you can be so strong. Don't you ever regret not being able to? She trailed off, not knowing how to say it. But Will knew what she was trying to ask. She was asking if he regretted not having his parents' love and support when growing up. Will shrugged. What's there to regret? Gwendolyn, don't you see how amazing this world is? Cancer can be cured, the human body can be strengthened infinitely, amazing types of sci-fi weapons can be made in real life, and you can even play a superhero. With my potential, how can I limit myself to these mundane thoughts? Gwen shook her head. You really are too strong. You've already realized all of those. I don't think you could have done that while being mundane, like us. Aura plus plus. While Will did aura farm successfully, the image of a sickly woman smiling at him flashed across his mind, making the ice cream taste not so sweet anymore. Why does everyone need to bring this up? Well, back to the topic. Are you excited about the transfer and promotion? Yep, this was the real purpose of Will's visit. He was finally poaching Gwen Stacy to Osiris, and promoting her to a real scientist. Gwen nodded immediately. I am. How can I not be? I can actually work with my idol Dr. Cho. But, to be honest, I also feel a lot of pressure. I don't know if I would be able to make it count, she said, biting her lips. Will covered her hand, which was nervously tapping the table, with his own. Don't ever doubt yourself, Gwen. Do you know how many lives your healing serum is going to save? This is, by no means, a promotion due to our friendship. Otherwise I'd have also promoted Peter. This is what you deserve. Yep, Will finally has it. The healing serum, his own senzu bean equivalent. It can heal minor injuries with no side effects. Since the healing serum is derived from Dr. Connor's lizard serum, it was really unstable and will risk dangerous consequences every time he took it after getting injured from training. Some of the best scientists at Oscorp and Osiris have been jointly trying to perfect it, but unexpectedly, the breakthrough came from a little high school intern, Gwendolyn Stacy. Of course, Dr. Connors had claimed the credit, only mentioning Gwen's name in passing. If not for their friendship, Will wouldn't even have known it was actually Gwen who cracked it. Taking credit for your intern's work is pretty common in the scientist community, meaning even if Gwen was in the right, she had already offended Connors. Therefore, Will decided to just transfer her to Osiris rather than letting her potential be wasted. Gwen was much more at ease after those words, as she continued to chat animatedly. When they were almost done eating, something happened. A modified armored vehicle stopped outside and a bald African American man stepped out, followed by men in black suits and combat gear. This person was dressed quite peculiarly, a long black leather coat or duster, an eye patch, a black tactical belt with a holster, and tactical pants. The man raised a fist, stopping his subordinates and proceeded to walk in alone, hands behind his back. Will's bodyguard moved forward to intercept the man but Will waved his ice cream spoon, letting him pass. William Osborn. You are a difficult man to meet, said the bald man, taking his seat. Nick Fury. It is indeed difficult if you send small fries like Coulson to meet me. This is not the first time S.H.I.E.L.D. has tried to contact Will. Other than trying some covert operations, they have also directly sent agents like Phil Coulson to directly talk to Will as S.H.I.E.L.D. representatives. Of course, Will was too disdainful to give them time, so he was always away on company matters. I think I should leave, said Gwen, putting down her bowl. Will nodded. I'm sorry about this. I'll see you at Osiris. Take a few days off and join whenever you are ready. Gwen smiled. I can't wait. After she left, escorted by one of his bodyguards, Will turned his attention back to the one-eyed man. So, Director Fury, to what do I owe this ambush? You could have made an appointment. This wasn't Will's first time seeing the man. Since Oscorp has dealings with the military and the government, they have crossed paths before, but Will was just accompanying Norman or other Oscorp higher management then. Fury a metallic disc on the table and pressed one of buttons. Immediately, a buzzing sound wave swept past him, making his ear itch. It was an anti-avs dropping device, blocking their voices within a range. I don't make appointments with kids who put billion-dollar prototypes on the street. I just show up, he said in a dry tone, sitting back on his chair. As expected. Will sighed inwardly. Of course Fury doesn't take him seriously. This is why he wasn't interested in talking with S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, that billion-dollar prototype just did your job, Will replied. White Knight just saved the world. So, you know, a thank you would be a better way to start a conversation. As far as I am aware, you didn't personally make the suit, and neither did you operate it. So, I'm wondering why you took that so personally, said Fury, raising an eyebrow. Perhaps, you have a close connection with the person who operates it, calling the shots, or maybe, you are the operator, he continued, observing Will closely. So you were rage-baiting me. Will smiled. But you should already know who seems to be calling the shots for White Knight. It's not that difficult to find out. As for the rest of your doubts, the Osborns have nothing to do with any vigilante activities. We have already reported the theft of our tech, which coincides with White Knight's equipment, he said, adopting a professional tone. Fury narrowed his eye. Since we are clear on who is calling the shots, then just let me say these words to whomever it may concern. Everyone is eyeing the White Knight, and Oscorp and Osiris are like a piece of fat meat. Just one opportunity and they will pounce. Here it comes. Oh. And do you, perhaps, have a solution to this predicament? He asked. At some point, everyone had already been vacated from the shop, leaving only the two of them. Fury tapped the metal disc again and it started projecting Will's fight against Magneto. But along with it, there were also other supernatural events. People achieving inhuman feats, missiles with Stark logo on them, and much more. You know what I see when I watch this footage. I see proof that the world is changing faster than we can police it. Men who can bend steel with their minds, gods walking among us, science that can level cities. And governments. They're too slow, too scared, too busy pointing fingers. Fury leaned forward, putting his hands on the table. That's why I'm building something. A response team. Not another squad of soldiers. Not another Black Ops ghost unit. A team of extraordinary people who can fight the battles no one else can. When the next Magneto shows up, or something worse, I don't want us to be caught scrambling. The image on the holograph showed the words Avengers Initiative. I call it, the Avengers Initiative. So, if White Knight joins and comes under your control, you're willing to protect him and our tech from hungry eyes, we'll finish the rest for him. You pick up fast. Do you think the White Knight and the mastermind behind him might have some questions? Of course. How can they trust you? You're a government organization, aren't you? Isn't it obvious that you'd be completely infiltrated like a brothel whore? Then you don't know anything about S.H.I.E.L.D. I know enough, Fury. The question is, do you know enough? I don't think I need to answer that silly question. Now, are you going to answer my question? Will shrugged. I will try to convey this further, to whomever it may concern. You know, this kind of thing needs time. Fury put a card on the table and slid it forward. Well, I would hurry if I were them. Because I'm not the one running out of time. Also, they better know, I have got my eye on them, he warned, his one eye dead serious. Noted. In the meantime, I'm sure White Knight would be happy to cooperate in case of emergencies, said Will, picking up the card. Of course he was not going to join S.H.I.E.L.D. If Fury really thinks they are that desperate, then he also knows nothing about the Osborns. It's just that Will doesn't have any proof of Hydra infiltration in S.H.I.E.L.D., so it's better to just skip the matter for a later date. BOOOM. Suddenly, the sound of an explosion rang out and even the building shook slightly, alarming both of them. This thing really caught both the pretenders off guard, both looking at each other with a, "You did this?" gaze. Iris. Where is the blast site? Will asked, ducking under the table. Checking drones. Confirmed. It's the NYPD 19th Precinct. The nearby areas are also affected. Will was on his feet immediately, going for the door. Outside was pure chaos, with people and cars scrambling through the streets. Police sirens were already sounding from the cars patrolling nearby. Even from here, he could see thick smoke rising in the distance. Activating his disguise skill, he took out his hoverboard from his car and flew straight to the station, wearing his armor on his way. But when he reached there, he only found thoroughly crumpled buildings and fire so hot that he couldn't even get close. What kind of explosion is this? Will had never seen such intense flames from any explosion. Everything was burning. Even the stones were in a red-hot state, as if they might melt. Will took out his phone and dialed a number. Thankfully, it was picked up quickly. Took you long enough to contact me, Jean's playful voice came from his earpiece. Jean, I need an urgent favor. While Jean checked the place using Cerebro, Will covered himself in a very heavy layer of nanofiber and plunged straight into the fire. He knew that Fury would be even more sure of identity now, if he didn't already know. But he really couldn't care right now. Will, I'm sorry. No survivors, Jean's reply came quickly. Will paused. What about Captain Stacy? Can you sense him? Will, there's no one in that building. Not alive at least. All I sense is scattered psychic signals, that belong to the recently dead. Jean wasn't feeling very comfortable while explaining this. This is too fucked up. I think I'm going to need your Phoenix mark, she said, gagging mid-sentence as if she might throw up. I'll visit. Sorry for this, said Will, hanging up. The nanofiber ensued and the nanofiber heated up very quickly, starting to burn his skin. As if in response, the mark on his shoulder glowed and he no longer felt the burning sensation. But even then, Will just stood there, thinking of the implications. The police station was attacked. Gwen's father might be dead. How will Gwen get through this? It was a problem because he knew exactly how much Gwen depended on her father. George Stacy is her emotional anchor. He blasted through the rubble, finally finding Captain Stacy's office. While Will was inside, a crowd had gathered outside, trying to find out about the situation. It became known to everyone that White Knight was seen going into the fire to save people. Many police officers and concerned bystanders were waiting while the firemen were trying their best to put out the fire. A while later a figure trudged out the rubble, his suit was burning red hot. Looking at the anxious crowd, Will shook his head. In his hand, he was clutching a police badge with Captain written on it. No. Patrick. Is there really no survivor? Let me go. My partner is in there. Sobs and cries echoed throughout the area. Will called his glider and started doing rescue work for the surrounding buildings that were affected. But mostly, he was just waiting for the inevitable, for Gwen's arrival. After he had saved those he could be saved, he took off the suit and waited at the scene. Spider-Gwen is coming. Yo, liking it so far. Throw in power stones whenever you have them lying around.